They put Moses in jail. They put Daniel in jail. Why, you haven't got a man of God in the Bible that wasn't put to jail when they started speaking out against exploitation and oppression.
Yo, welcome. Welcome to the stream. Welcome to the broadcast. My name is BC.
Abdul Hafid bin Abdullah. Just call me Abdullah. We here.
Live at Sokoto House.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, this is our first ever episode. Coming to y'all with a lot of topics. Talking about culture. Today, specifically, we're going to talk about a lot of stuff, though. We're going to cover a lot of things. What you got?
We're just going to be vibing, man. Like, the whole goal is, since this new era of streaming, kind of creating the space. We actually get down every day on a daily basis. Things going on in our community center, things going on in our community. So we're kind of opening up the actual space of Sokoto House to the rest of the community, sharing some ideals, sharing perspectives that's different, encouraging and uplifting other programs that's going on around the country. Sometimes it's going to be maybe some international news. We may actually have some reflections on local news, national news, and sometimes we may just be kicking it, man. We kind of competitive. We may play some games, but we're going to kind of encourage some little feedback from the chat. So that's one of the reasons why we chose the live stream, right? We want to kind of get some interaction. We're hoping, to be gathering like every morning between 10 to 12. That may vary. Everything will be recorded and made available later. So just tap in, man. There's not much going on. We just here. We're not really looking for, we have no expectations, man. We're not looking for a large following. We're not looking for anything specific. We're just looking to actually create a space in which we can actually build and be built with, right? So not much, that's where we at, right?
Just create conversation around topics that we feel passionate about.
Yeah, create conversations around topics we feel passionate about. So I think the first thing we talked about that we was going to kind of like delve into is just culture, right? Because again, even creating this space is thinking about like culture, right? You know what I'm saying? What is it, right? In which ways do it serve us, right? In which ways can it hinder us, or has it hindered us? And just kind of building about that, man, and thinking about what's needed. What are the components that's needed, right, to be aware of the culture that's around you? I translate culture as your environment, right? Inwardly and outwardly. What is the culture inside you? What is the culture outside of you? And then how is that culture influencing you, right? And I think one of the things we talked about the other day, that was kind of one of the sparks of why we wanted to do the podcast, or this broadcast, we don't call it a podcast, is thinking, to me, a measurement of maturity, right, and human development is the degree in which you can become an active participant in your environment, in your culture, right, and not a passive participant, meaning that you're aware of how your culture and your environment is influencing you, and then in turn, right, able to manage and regulate how your environment and the culture around you is influencing you. And then the next level of that is then how do you become an engineer? How do you begin to actually generate a certain type of outcome inside your culture?
Right, so like, are you cultivating culture, or are you being moved by the culture?
Exactly, right?
Is culture cultivating you?
Are you cultivating culture, or is culture cultivating you? Or is it they call a symbiotic relationship? It's just like this type of mutually dependent relationship. As an old saying, they say back in the days of hip hop, either you moving the crowd or you being moved by the crowd, right? A wise person, I would say, is someone who learns, right, how to allow themselves to be moved by the crowd when the crowd is moving in the direction that they want to go. While at the same time, at times where the crowd is moving in a direction that's not to their benefit, right, not to their advantage, that they then begin to push back, right, and begin to redirect the crowd, or attempt to redirect the crowd in the way that it needs to go, or just completely get out the way. Right?
All right, so let's set some ground. We got to set like a baseline. What is culture?
So think about it. If we do a brainstorm, right? Everything that I think about as culture, I'm going to automatically talk about language. I'm going to say food. I'm going to say morals. I'm going to say heritage. I'm going to say identity, right? Habits, right? Because you can have, again, culture, from my perception, right? You can have an individual culture, right? You can have an internal culture, even within the individual, right? How do I think? How do I feel? How do I respond? That's my internal culture. My habits and my behaviors is part of my internal culture. That internal culture has an impact upon the culture with my interactions with people around me. So how am I interacting with people? First, beginning like with family. right? How I interact with my mom, how I interact with my dad, how I interact with my siblings, how I interact with my family is going to be different than how I interact with my neighbors. It's going to be different how I interact with in the workplace, my colleagues at work. In every particular environment, you have these nuances when it comes to culture, right? But all those things include things like, right, language, beliefs, right, behaviors, right, music, dance. All those things are culture. And so if I was to break it down, I would say culture is that thing, is those patterns of behaviors, right, that govern you and you seek to govern. Behaviors, again, inwardly, inside of me, right, and outside of me, right, in close proximity to me and also far from me, broader, like societal culture, right? There's cultural norms, there's community norms, there's familial norms, and there's intrapersonal norms.
So when you look around today, like we live in the Cape Fear region, what do you see culture to be? What is culture here in the Cape Fear?
Shout out to the Cape Fear,
yeah,
right?
Shout out to
you know what I'm saying? Anybody don't know what Cape Fear? This is obviously hopefully an international broadcast, although we're kind of aware that, you know, we're locally here in the Cape Fear region, so we're going to represent the soil in which we in.
North Carolina.
North Carolina. So that's the southeast region, for anybody that may not know. And Cape Fear has a beautiful history that we'll be spending some time learning about, simply because this is the air in which we're breathing, the soil in which we're consuming food, and it's the people in which we've galvanized and organized with. It's our community right now, right? So we'll be uplifting Cape Fear, so shout out to the Cape Fear. So technically Cape Fear is, you know, what, is about 6 to 7 different counties. You know, I don't want to put that number out there blindly, but we know for sure it's New Hanover County, Brunswick County, Penner County, Bladen County. Yeah, I could think so. That would be considered Cape Fear.
Yeah, that's Cape
But
Fear.
this is before we bring out the technical facts, right, which will be later in the game, right? You know what I'm saying? Today we're going to say Cape Fear is any particular county or city or gathering of people that's organized their lives around the Cape Fear River.
And the Cape Fear River goes all the way through North Carolina.
All the way through
up.
North Carolina.
So
But there's
shout
some
out to the whole Cape Fear
yeah.
River.
Shout out to the whole Cape Fear.
Yeah.
Right. So what was you saying about the Cape Fear? What's the culture?
What's the culture?
Ooh, that's a loaded one, boy.
Might as well go ahead and get right into it.
I don't want to get right into
Go ahead and
it.
get right
Why
into
you want
it,
to get?
yeah.
Go. You tell me.
But I think it's we
you
talked
more
about
the
this
historian.
a lot. The micro informs the macro. So I think the culture here in Wilmington, North Carolina, is the same as the culture in a lot of different places. You know what I'm saying? A lot of people, a lot of us, your neighbors, whatever. You know what I'm saying? We're more moved. I wouldn't say more moved by, but we're moved by entertainment, politics. I know a lot of people might not be into politics, but I believe that if you're not into politics, politics is certainly into you. So it's something that you kind of want to, you know, get familiar with, understand, and be able to articulate what is happening in politics and, you know, what politics is doing to you, how it's actually impacting your life.
Absolutely, absolutely. Culture of Cape Fear, man, that's a loaded question. Let's do this then, right? We'll come back to that question, right? I think it's important to define what is the real deal for all of our listeners, right? Mm-hmm. What are we saying is the real deal? Why are we defining this broadcast as the real deal? Well, real stands on its own merit, right? We're looking for something that's actual sound, something that's concrete, something that's wholesome, right? Everything that opposite to real, right, is not wholesome, not concrete, not sound, right? It's fake, right? It's deficient. It's deficient in the proper minerals or nutrients that's needed for things to thrive. So we want to prioritize things that we can thrive off of, what's real. But the deal, right, is spelled D.E.E.L, right, versus the D.E.A.L for the acronym that means demonstrate to educate.
Educate to liberate.
That part right there, right? So demonstrate to educate, educate to liberate. So meaning that we're inside of a mindset and we believe and we want to cultivate, right, within the hearts and minds of people that they shouldn't have to spend their time, man, proselytizing and convincing, right, individuals to think the way that they think and behave the way that they behave. They should be able to actually demonstrate, right, its capacity to produce more healthier and more wholesome outcomes. And in that demonstration, it becomes a form of education, right? And in that education, people begin to think to themselves, I want to learn more about that. I don't want to learn more about what you're doing. I want to learn more about how you're building community, more about how you're sustaining and cultivating healthy relationships. And then when they come to ask you, then they're more open to want to learn versus, you know, you're trying to seek them or trying to convince them of what they should do and what they should think and how they should think. No, we want to prioritize. We still want to educate, right, and communicate and use the mouthpiece, whatnot. I think that's a transmission of knowledge is communication through speech is essential to transmission of knowledge. But there's a higher transmission of knowledge that comes through demonstrating in behavior and action. And then the goal of that, right? That's the key. So the goal of the education is to liberate.
Because the only thing that can defeat darkness
Is light.
Is light.
Yes.
Knowledge.
Knowledge.
I mean, and basically, anybody can say anything, really. But the demonstration of what you believe, your actions are going to speak louder,
Way louder
than your words. So that's why we believe in, demonstrate to educate and then educate to liberate.
And be clear, liberation is from anything that shackles or inhibits the development of the human being. So any chain, right, any form of imprisonment, whether it's in our own minds, our passions and desires, right, the things we've learned from previous generations, right, or another human being or a system that choose to claim a right over you. And in claiming that right over you of ownership, right, they begin to dictate, exploit, and attempt to dominate. We believe that the only one has the right over us, this is our personal belief, you can rock how you want to rock, right, is the creator and sustainer of everything in existence, Allahu subhanahu wa ta'ala. Like God is the only one that has a right to own anything, it owns everything. And our belief is that no one has the right to own us, and we have not the right to own anything. Our job is to support, manage, right, and cooperate with while we're living in this earth. So again, the real deal, right, broadcast, RBG, excuse me, RDB, right, real deal broadcast. Okay, let's get into it, man. So anything else? What's going on?
I mean, we kind of set the baseline on what is culture to us. We're going to have visitors coming in and out. That's going to be something, we live here in a community center, and that's just, grassroots. We here at the base of it.
All the time.
All the time. We here at Sokoto House. You see it. You can fall through, come through and, just check the vibes, just kind of kick it with us. You can kick it and talk with us if you want to, just come through and just get a vibe of what Sokoto House is and the things that we have going on at Sokoto House. If somebody here all the time, it's a very lively place. It's a place that we all love and enjoy. And it's a place that actually comes from our motto, which is placemaking. And that motto is CPRV. You're going to hear us say CPRV a lot. We're going to talk about CPRV on this platform a lot. And that what CPRV is a community-based public health response to violence. And going back to what culture is, violence is, a part of culture. How we interact with other people, our neighbors, and there's many different types of violence.
Yeah. So in addition to that, we also want to make sure that you also know too, we want you to engage. So if you know of any programs that we have a section, a couple of subsections, right? So one of the subsections we're going to have is upstream, right? Or essentially focus, which is community-based, focus is frontline observations of community-based upstream strategies. So if you know of any particular organizations, any particular initiatives that's happening around the country that would you like some feedback, right, from us on, or be able to spotlight some of the work that they're doing, if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allows us to actually develop some form of momentum, right, we want to actually uplift other programs and other things that people are doing around the country that specifically community-based, right, that's leveraging upstream strategies. Upstream meaning those things that's looking to prevent and those things that's looking to actually address the matters before they become problematic. There's always, need for harm reduction and interventions, but we're very much concerned with, right, in alignment with our righteous ancestral inheritance, right, is we're looking to prevent, right, and use preventive medicine prior than try to use corrective medicine, right? And if you can think upstream, if you can look at what's the reason that there's problems with the actual water coming down into your particular neighborhood that may be dirty, right? So instead of trying to clean the water out, the actual stream, we're looking to see what's the cause of the actual stream being dirty in the first place and how do we correct that. So we'll be actually uplifting and spotlighting other organizations. I think we talked about maybe also including some issues. Like, for instance, we can hop into one of them. I think we have a local issue here inside of Wilmington, North Carolina. You want to pop into it?
Yeah, we can go into it. There's a congressman. It's not even a congressman. It's a councilman here who has proposed a new ordinance that it's aimed to address the unhoused population, the homeless population, however you refer to them, just keep in mind they are people who are going through extreme levels of oppression. They've been impacted by the system. Some of them are justice impacted, where they've been, released from prison and come home. People that are dealing with mental health issues. But these are our neighbors. These are people who exist within our community, and these are people that we love and know sometimes. Sometimes it's our family members. But these people they are a part of our community. But we have a councilman here who has proposed that we completely, or the city completely removes all access to people being able to tent and camp, and things like that in our community.
So we want to read through some of it or something? We're broadcasting
Yeah.
live. Yeah, you can just tell her. You good. You all right? What you need? Oh, yeah, you good. No, it's on this side right here. Yeah, we're gonna be real organic with it. It's like being inside of our actual spot or whatnot. So we got all type of community members. We got core team members. They may be popping in, popping out, saying what's up. We may be interrupting in the midst of our conversation. Just get comfortable with it. We brought you into our world. Again, it's the Kodo House. This is our home. So be comfortable with that. So D.E.E.L is the guy's name, right?
Yeah, Luke Waddell.
Luke Waddell.
Councilman Luke Waddell. I'm gonna try and get it pulled up on here on the stream so that we can kind of follow along.
And that's
with
Wilmington,
it,
North Carolina, for everybody else that may be listening. Keep in mind, houselessness and the crisis of houselessness is actual a global crisis, right? So, we think about our some people being inadvertently and how you want to say as collateral damage, things that happen, without deliberate intent, right? What's the word for it? Not collateral damage, but not collateral damage, but when unintended consequences. So some people are houseless because of unintended consequences of certain decisions that people are making, right? And then some people are houseless because they have personal things going on in their life. But across the board right now, what you're witnessing is that there's a systemic, right, cause of why people are finding themselves houseless, right? And in Wilmington, North Carolina, right, there's a systemic, right, dynamic to why people are houseless because there's an ongoing process of gentrification that's happening here, right? And the cost of living is rising. On top of the fact that some time back, there was a call where different cities in North Carolina was encouraging people to come to Wilmington, North Carolina, because it was a place where houselessness, right, was, more favorable, right, because of the type of services that was available, and those services are no longer available. And there's also an attitude shift that's happening inside the city because of the objectives and goals to expedite economic prosperity in the region at the expense of whomever, right? And that's a whole other conversation we'll have. But again, so D.E.E.L in Wilmington, North Carolina, for those who always give the clarification because some people don't know where we're at. But we're going to look at the ordinance that I guess it's a series of ordinances they put out in relation to houselessness, do's and don'ts, and we're going to talk a little bit about it to see where our perspectives is and see if we can actually get anybody else to weigh in.
All right, so y'all bear with me on this as I pull this up. But like Abdullah said, the crisis of homelessness is a global issue. It's something that's gotten really bad over the past few years. The cost of living just continues to just rapidly increase, and that's everybody. It's impacting everybody, not just people who find themselves on the streets, but that's people who are in their homes as well. I think a lot of people in this country don't really have the pockets to afford an emergency if an emergency were to happen, and that's an issue in and of itself. I'm trying to find this ordinance so it's something that we can follow along with.
You already know what it is, man. There's people making decisions that in their environments, right? They don't really care what type of immediate impact that's going to have on the actual people that those particular laws or demands are being imposed upon. It's not an abnormal thing. We shouldn't act like it is, right? People have been doing it. They're still doing it. Where it's called structural violence or a structural form of actual harm, where policies are being passed that for someone on paper it just looks like a solution to a problem, but for the people that it's impacting, it could be the difference between life and death, right? And that's what we want to kind of look at. Again, just share some thoughts and ideas on what we feel about that. Start generating some form of intellectual stimuli, right? I'm saying on this little broadcast we got going on.
So I'm gonna just go ahead and So while
Look up
Abdullah send that
Angie's.
to me, we're
Let
gonna,
me
you know what I'm
see.
saying, kind of wait on that, see what's going on.
Angie just shared it.
Y'all gotta bear with us. We trying to, you know, make sure we become familiar with this.
No, cool. Y'all gotta bear with. Y'all gotta kick it with us. You know what I'm
just kick it
saying?
with us, man. Just kick
It's
it
going
with us.
down. We
here,
straight.
chilling.
I promise you, hang out for a while, man. You can find some value and benefit. You know what I'm saying? May you actually start to plug in when we plug in, man. Share some, you know, ideals. Share some of your opinions as well too. That's also welcome as well. What's that? Was it Candy?
Yeah.
Angela Candy. Go ahead and go through the article, see what they're talking about, and we'll pull up some of the details of it in a second.
All right, so here the article is right here. Try and make this where it fits on the screen.
Right here. I send you the,
Scale that to the window, man.
which one we send it to? I'm gonna send it to your WhatsApp. Is that on your,
Nah, that's on my phone. We ain't even gonna be able to see that.
so which one we send it to? I just download it and send it.
All right, so here is the news article on. Says on August 5th, the Wilmington City Council will vote on an ordinance. That's today, actually, Tuesday, August 5th. The Wilmington City Council will vote on an ordinance that will ban people from sleeping on city property. The city of Wilmington and New Hanover County have been working for years to address homelessness. In 2023, New Hanover County commissioners approved changes to prevent people from sleeping on county property. City Councilman Luke Waddell says it's time for the city to set similar rules in place. Waddell says he first introduced the ordinance in early 2024. However, council members decided to wait for a Supreme Court ruling. Since then, the Supreme Court has permitted cities to take action against people camping in public spaces. The ordinance states that people cannot occupy, camp, sleep, set up tents, cooking equipment, or bedding on city property between the hours of 10 p.m. to 7 a.m. I'll read that again. The ordinance states that people cannot camp, sleep, set up tents, cooking equipment, or bedding on city property between the hours of 10 p.m. to 7 a.m. The ordinance also states that city parking decks and parking lots are for parking and associated activities, as well as entrances to city facilities. Oh, and then they calling out other cities that have issues with homelessness. We've all seen what happens in places like LA or San Francisco when the issue is ignored, encampments grow, open air drug use becomes pervasive, and lawlessness in general typically follows. And as far as I'm concerned, I'm not interested in going down that road, said Councilman Waddell. Waddell says he's been inundated with calls from business owners in the downtown Wilmington area. He says people have expressed safety concerns as members of the unhoused population will set up in front of businesses, which can deter customers. He mentioned that some employees have been escorted to their cars late at night to ensure their safety. It's about setting clear, common sense boundaries that protect those public spaces, that ensure safety, and keep the city a vibrant and safe place for everybody.
Now, I'm just gonna be clear. He hasn't said anything that wasn't rational, right? It was just very insensitive, right, and very empathetic, right, in relation to what the reality is for those particular populations that you're going to restrict from being able to place themselves in a public space for safety purposes, right? Because that's really the only reason why they're in the public spaces, for safety purposes, and often sometimes to position themselves so that people that may want to help them can actually support them. But since he referenced Los Angeles and San Francisco and other places, what he needs to understand is that, and this is very important for him to understand, is that how you had the camps wasn't because they was allowing individuals to actually establish themselves and sleep and reside on public property, specifically city and government buildings and properties. It was because they actually denied them. In all those locations that was unregulated, they began to establish camps, right, that began to be what you refer to as Skid Row today. Like Skid Row is not inside of an actual public city, you know what I'm saying, location, right? It's inside of a city, it's inside of the city, but it's not inside of a city building. It's not in front of a public building, right? It's at a place that actually is almost considered to be neutral, not an open store.
It's right downtown Los Angeles. What you mean it's not in front of it?
It's not in front of stores, though. It's on the side. It's in downtown Los Angeles, in a place where there's no public store openings.
Well, some people will argue that it's because there's no public, like them being there is the reason for there being no public stores.
That's what I'm trying to say. That's my point. D.E.E.L's restricting it. So what it did, it placed them into another location where they began to gather. If you restrict any human being from going to this location, this location, this location, this location, then you only leave them a certain number of locations. And not only do one come, right, but multiple come because they're looking for security and safety. So that community begins to use their own form of actual policing, their own form of actual structure, right, in those environments or whatnot, even though it's not all the way secure. Like, think about it. If you say Skid Row, is Skid Row right in front of, you know what I'm saying, Sears, right in front of the mall? Is it right in front of the government building? Is it right in front of the courthouse?
I don't know.
It's not. Like, Skid Row is not in front of the courthouse. Skid Row is not in front of their downtown, you know what I'm saying, public stores and businesses. Skid Row is in the downtown area, but off to the side. In a place that was arguably, right, not interrupting people's business, in a place that was arguably not interrupting people's, right, it's literally up under the freeway. Some parts of it is up under a freeway.
I mean, and that's from, you know what I'm saying, to shield yourself from inclement weather, and you know what I'm saying?
The same thing they're trying to do when they go in front of these stores.
Yeah.
So my statement to D.E.E.L to think about, if you're going to inhibit them and you're going to reference these other cities, understand that when they inhibit them in these other cities is what caused what we know today to be Skid Row. So what is a solution that you're going to follow up with after you inhibit them? Because they're going to find a place to survive. The human nature is to survive. The human nature is to find security. The human nature is to find shelter. If they don't have shelter, then they're going to use anything they can around them to secure the shelter. If you restrict the various locations they can go to, you're going to begin to find them going to the only locations they have available to them, and then they're going to begin to seek out security. That's when you begin to see the large numbers. Because the smaller numbers, right, the isolated environments is where you have child molestations and rapes happening and violent acts happening, right? It's the visibility in the public environment that they begin to actually look for the safety in hopes that somebody else seeing something else, right, will inhibit what someone's trying to do. So that's my point I'm making, is that, like, there's no one, right, that should think to themselves that, okay, how does any community, any person, right, should be sitting up in front of a place where somebody actually paid. I paid to have my store here, to welcome businesses, right? And I paid to have it here, but someone else can just post up and don't have to pay nothing, and they can only post up and they can actually make it dirty, filthy. Sometimes there's alcohol, drugs, urine, right, left in that location. Anyone that's ignoring that is not being rational, right? So his point in general is that it's a legitimate problem. His solution is insensitive, it's empathetic, it lacks empathy, right? And it doesn't have a real solution to the problem. It's just moving the problem outside of the public eye, which then creates an environment where later you can have a Skid Row because you begin to find individuals finding the one or two locations where they go kind of hang out. Mm-hmm. The police may come through and break up those camps, right? But what happens when they begin to discover that they can actually hop on, you know what I'm saying, unoccupied, you know what I'm saying, property with absentee owners? And it requires an owner who is living in some other part of the country, sometimes some other part of the world, right, to come 6-7 months later to actually do something about those individuals sitting on that property.
Because the city has, you know, kind of
cornered them and restricted them
to, you know, having to go there.
Simple as that. Or the other problem comes from, right, okay, then now you have to arrest them. And you begin to arrest them, right, and not to mention, if you're criminalizing them in general or whatnot, they're not going to be able to pay, they broke. they're not going to be able to pay.
Now, if you just criminalize them, the only people that pay for that is the taxpayers.
1,000%. And you're inhibiting them from even being able to see a way out, right, of actual their crisis if they're houseless, because now you're placing debt upon them, right? And you actually, now, but keep this in mind, though, right? Jail can also be a form of shelter.
Jail can also, it can be a form of shelter. It can be a place where you go to get clean. But there's drug use in jail. There's
not as accessible as what's here on the streets.
Why are you gonna get the care that you need? You know,
in jail you would get it better than you would get here. So that's a whole nother culture as well too. You start criminalizing, right? You also attract, you know what I'm saying, the houseless community, because some houseless community understand that there's actual, right? Like, listen, in jail you get free dental, right? You get free food, free housing, right? Warm water, warm clothes, clean clothes. There's a whole philosophy amongst the people inside the actual houseless community, not all of them, but particularly in places where there's an overwhelming number of actual houses, where the culture of houselessness is dominant in particular cities. Like you go to Skid Row or certain places inside the country where that's present, the philosophy of sometimes it's better for me to be in jail just to get a hot meal and get, you know what I'm saying, take a bath or shower is legitimate.
It's legitimate. I saw this one video where dude was like, I guess he was paying people's bonds and getting people out of jail.
And he got him out of jail. He got mad.
He was pissed.
He's like, where I'm going?
What am I supposed to do now?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So, I mean, what's a decent solution?
It has to be, action has to be followed up with an equal amount of actual responsive action that deals with unintended consequences. So if you're going to inhibit the houseless community from being in front of the downtown public stores, then you know they're going somewhere else. What's your solution to address that? If your solution is just to keep removing them, right, then I can tell you, and I think anyone with any sense can tell you, that's not a viable solution. You're going to hurt people, and you're going to also make the situation, because typically when you start having a policing mentality, their goal is to suppress, right, and make unwelcoming the environment so that houseless people move from Wilmington. That's really the agenda. The agenda is I'm going to make it so difficult for you to be here, right, that you ain't going to want to just be here.
Just because it's nice sunny skies and you got the beach, you know, and it's warm.
But the only way they can actually do that, right, is through policing. And what they don't realize is that a heavily policed environment where you have to actually arrest and incarcerate individuals can also be a form of attraction, right, for the houseless community.
Because you're going to get that easy shelter.
In and out from time to time. They use it and leverage it in the same way they leverage, you know what I'm saying, homeless shelters and places where there's free meals. It's a resource to them, right? When you're inside of a crisis, everything is permissible to you, man, to get the basic needs met. Not everything, but for the most part, you know what I'm saying, for the most part, everything. So the solution for me is, in that particular scenario, right, if you come up with an actual plan to actually suppress the presence of houseless communities inside of like the downtown area, then you also, as a social engineer, because that's what you're trying to be through your policies, you're trying to engineer a social outcome, then you need to think about what is the actual effect, what is the effect of your decision? There's something that's going to follow up. Do you have something in place for that? If you don't have something in place for that, I'm going to push back on what you're saying you want to do. So for that reason and that reason alone, I'll reject what D.E.E.L is saying, right? Not because I think that what he's saying is not legitimate. Come on. Like, you know what I'm saying? Why would it be not legitimate to want to actually make sure that people are not hanging out in front of actual stores that people paid, right, to do business in? Anyone that says that doesn't make any sense,
you're just not being real with yourself.
You're not being real with yourself, and you're not going to be able to get any type of results.
Yeah.
Right? You have to be real.
You can't have a constructive conversation
at
about
all,
what's going on,
right?
If you ignoring the actual.
Because the average person that's saying that they don't have houseless people sleeping on their front porch. They don't have houseless people sleeping in their backyard. They don't have houseless people actually sleeping on their couches, right? So if you want to say that for the public, right, you know what I'm saying, that a person that's paying rent for a particular business in order to generate business, right, should not want that in front of their store, right, then you're not also being realistic and saying you don't have it in front of your house. And I'm not saying you shouldn't say that. I think that people should push back on the enforcement, right, and the policing of that particular problem, not because what they're saying is what they want to change is a wrong thing. No, because the solution is not comprehensive. Like, you're doing one thing and causing another problem, and then you're leaving that unaddressed. And then the person asks, well, who are you accommodating? That's where the moral issue coming in. So you want to accommodate a person that's well-to-do, to have a warm place to live, to take a bath. I'm saying that's actually generating excess wealth, right? You want to accommodate them in order to actually pick on someone that's actually completely devastated and barely know where they're going to actually, you know what I'm saying, sleep or be safe at tonight.
Just creating throwaways.
Basically, when it comes to, like, the difference between a person being inconvenienced, I'm going to wake up in the morning and I'm going to have to come to work. I may have to pay somebody $10, $20 a morning to clean my front area off. I'm inconvenienced by having to clean my area off because it was some urine or some alcohol that's oftentimes not even the actual house cleaning through the alcohol. There's usually sometimes the people hanging out in the downtown area that's drunk, that through the alcohol and urinated over the area, right? I'm gonna have to pay somebody to clean that area off, right? So I'm inconvenienced by $20. But the result of that, right, if I remove that as an actual problem for me, the result of that is that now I'm going to stop somebody else from being able to actually sleep there at night, and they may end up inside of a forest somewhere, raped, you know what I'm saying, dead, right, you know what I'm saying, or some other type of heinous thing done to them.
Yeah, because I mean that is another reality. There is violence happening inside these camps. You know,
that's a whole another conversation that I would be more interested in actually having. Is what is the actual effort inside these camps and inside the house community in general to inhibit the actual regurgitation of trauma and oppression, interpersonal oppression that's happening within inside those environments, right? Like that's what I'm more concerned with,
yeah.
Right? You know what I'm saying? Like they're houseless and there's very little apparently that the city and county is saying they can do to remove people from being houseless. You can't find them homes, right? Even if you do find homes for some, you can't find them for all,
not for all,
right? So there's still another overwhelming crisis that's taking place in that particular environment, and that's overwhelming regurgitation of trauma and oppression, interpersonal oppression happening there. And I'm interested in how do we actually resolve that.
Yeah, because you're just kind of stuck in a situation where you can't get out of that hole you in. You know what I'm saying? You can't see the light at the end of the tunnel if all you see is violence all around you, and you being ignored by the city, you being ignored by your family. You're not necessarily.
You ain't even being ignored. You're being attacked by the city.
You're being attacked by the city. Like hands down, like
right. They don't want you around.
Heavy-handed, they coming through, they smashing your stuff, they taking your belongings, and that's how you get away out.
Well, you know, one of the things that's going to happen is that you're going to be frustrated. There's going to be an increase of actual stealing, robbing, and taking of other people's stuff, right? You know what I'm saying? And then the lack of security, right? One of the other concerns you have is the actual sexual predator dynamic, right? It's very difficult for sexual predators to even get housing here. Right, you know what I'm saying? And you got people that's working full-time jobs, right, that has the income, right, that's registered sex offenders that can't get housing because there's very little housing options available for them. They're living in tents inside the actual forest.
I mean, well, you got to acknowledge also there's a good portion of Americans that believe these people don't deserve housing, or housing isn't a human right. Like people don't
not a
have,
practical reality.
It's not a.
To me, I'm into practical. Like there's no one that can tell me that a person doesn't legally deserve, you know what I'm saying, the right to have housing. And then deal with the fact that when you roaming around in the street in the middle of the night, you know what I'm saying, early in the morning, there's somebody that's a sexual predator, right, you know what I'm saying, who's frustrated, stressed out, you know what I'm saying, feeling marginalized, you know what I'm saying, feeling rejected by society, is going to have more of a sociopathic mentality when it comes to dealing with you because you don't give a damn about them, so they don't give a damn about you. They're going to let their desires, you know what I'm saying, enslave them. They're going to do what they're going to do, right? And that's just the reality. Versus a situation where you got somebody that's a victim to their own inhibited, you know what I'm saying, desires, right? And they're looking for help. And they find help, right? Now, even then, when you give people help, they still go back and do things they shouldn't be doing. But what about the overwhelming number of individuals that actually are sexual predators? When they actually get assistance, they actually find ways to transform their lives.
I mean, what portion of the people you think that is, if you had to put a number on it?
So it depends on what type of sexual predators you're talking about.
I'm just talking about just the people in general, not even just.
You got people that's considered to be sexual predators, or people that's sex. So you got sexual predators and you got sex offenders. A sex offender would be considered somebody that, like, you know what I'm saying, a statutory rape, right? You know what I'm saying? They was a certain age and they had a mutual relationship with somebody that was a younger age, and there was that much of an age difference between them.
Or, like, you know what I'm saying, we had old boy, he came in and was trying to get help, but he didn't tell us that he was a sexual offender.
Exactly.
And he was.
So the question is that person? When we say that person is prone towards, right, predatory behavior, or that person is trying to actually navigate, you know what I'm saying, being marginalized in society. Because by not telling us, right, the possibility is, okay, would we have helped him? Although we would have. But what has his experience been? Have people helped him when they find out that he has something like that?
Probably not. That's why he didn't tell us
Exactly.
that that was his background.
Exactly.
But I mean, people gonna find out one way or another. And then when people find, like when we
But
found
when you
out,
when you houseless, are you on the verge of becoming houseless? Right? Think about people with felonies. Forget the people with the sex offense, right? Or the sexual predator. Sexual predator is different from me from a sex offender, right? Sexual predator is someone that is actually out there, you know what I'm saying?
enslaved to your desire.
And predatory, aggressive, you know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? Harmful, you know what I'm saying? Wanting to hurt, harm,
Yeah.
right? You know what I'm saying? It's a deeper level of sickness you got going on versus someone that is committed a sex offense, right? And it still doesn't mean the same category as someone being, like I'm saying, unhealthy and also, from my opinion, a foul personality. Like, right? They're unhealthy, they're sick, and their behavior is foul. I make no qualms about it. I don't like people that's like that. I don't have a prejudgment about them, but that behavior that they're involved in, I got daughters and I got loved ones and whatnot, and I'm just never, I've been cultivated in an environment, I never respected that, right? But do I judge them? Absolutely not. Do I believe that they need help? Absolutely. Do I believe that society needs to prioritize helping them? Absolutely, right? And I believe that as long as society don't prioritize helping them, right, you know what I'm saying, that you actually perpetuate the behavior and put people at risk. But bringing it back to the conversation is that those individuals are inside of Wilmington's, right, you know what I'm saying, houseless community, right, roaming around, right, unregulated, unchecked. They can literally, listen, there's some people coming home from prison. I know for a fact right now, there's some people coming home from prison that they, like, literally would actually violate their actual parole if they don't have a legitimate location to live in. But a sexual predator come home, they got them living in camps, bro. And not being violated because the situation is such that it's difficult to get housing. So they're not violating them. Keep in mind, a violation is a choice. You haven't committed a crime. The parole officer can choose to violate you. It's an infraction, right? It's not an actual crime that you committed to where you have to be booked, you have to be charged, right? It's to the discretion of the parole officer. So the parole officers that actually have these sex offenders, they know that housing is a crisis. So if you don't have a legitimate place to live, right, they kind of turn a blind eye and say, okay, I understand. Check in with us more frequently. But there's some people coming home, gang backgrounds, other type of backgrounds, right? You know what I'm saying? Serious offenses related to robbery that they're telling you, man, if you don't have a physical place to go, right, or an address to give me where I can locate you, I'm going to violate you. Oh, you can't come home unless you have an ankle bracelet. You can't have an ankle bracelet unless you actually have a house. So you got people that's committing certain type of crimes, right, that can't come home, or if they come home, they can be violated, right, for not having an actual residence. Whereas because of the situation inside of our actual city related to actual finding housing for people with sex offenses, it doesn't matter how predatory it is, right? Minus murder, right? You know what I'm saying? That you can still function inside this community off the radar. You can function in this community off the radar, meaning there's no house, there's no physical location where your parole officer can locate you. You just have to check in. So there's no trace of you. You roaming around in the bushes, right, living in these different, you know what I'm saying, environments or whatnot.
So by default, you're going to find yourself in those situations or in locations
where people are vulnerable.
Yeah.
Then there's a high rate of actual kids that's houseless, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So kids are now roaming around in our communities and whatnot. So I'll argue that you have way more unreported sexual offenses happening inside the houseless community than any other community.
But I mean, those people are technically, well, not technically, out of sight, out of mind.
Well,
that's what the city is trying to make it.
Yes. And what I would say is, they're not out of sight, out of mind. They're very visible.
Yeah.
Which is the reason why they got this whole conversation happening.
Yeah.
And this whole vote happening, right? They want to make them invisible.
They're too visible.
They want to make them invisible.
It's a blight.
Right? But the way in which they want to make them invisible, right, what I would argue, right, is going to cause a greater problem. If they study the patterns, right, of social mobility or social movements, right, when it comes to houseless communities, and when you begin to restrict them and regulate them, and then you begin to corner them, there's two things that can happen. One thing they're hoping it can happen is that they go other places, right? But they're not going to go into the country because there's no actual Salvation Armies in the country. There's no, you know what I'm saying, Mother Hubbards inside the country. There's no place where you can get free food. There's no places where you can actually get free showers. Like we host every Thursday and every, Wednesday. Or you have the mobile shower from, what's the organization?
Vigilant Hope.
Vigilant Hope, right?
Yeah.
The infrastructure and the support within the country, right, don't facilitate them wanting to go into the country. So they would rather stay where they can get the showers, they can get the food, they can get some level of protection, even if they're being targeted, right, by law enforcement, right, instead of going somewhere where they can't get that.
That's the thing. The resources
It's here.
It's here. Like if you push them out of the city,
You can't push them out the city. I'm gonna argue you can't push them out the city.
but that's what they doing. They gonna push them out the city.
No, that's what they're trying to do. I explained to you again.
They finna do it.
Where they gonna go? Listen, when you ain't got nothing, you gonna let someone force you somewhere where you ain't got nothing? You already ain't got nothing, but you can tap into some public. So you're gonna let someone force you away from, right, the place where you can get something from public resources to a place where you have nothing and then now there's nothing even being offered publicly? They're not going anywhere.
What you mean they not going?
Listen, about 2016, 2017, there was a period of time where they were saying that people in Raleigh was actually putting the houseless community on actual greyhounds and sending them down here. In order for someone to go
What
on
you mean? Like who in Raleigh was doing that?
I don't want to put a name out there, like as if I know. I heard it was being supported by the government, by local government, as well as actual non-for-profit organizations, encouraging them that we don't have resources.
Wow, and sending them here?
You have better options and better chances inside of Wilmington, right? Because they have, think about it. In 2016, you had Salvation Army. You also had, what's the other little houseless shelter?
Good Shepherd?
Good Shepherd, right? Then you had multiple churches that was feeding people, right? You had activities going on, right? The downtown area was unoccupied. They wasn't gentrifying the downtown area at that time. They had been doing, but they hadn't started actually really putting in. In 2016, they put in the actual boardwalk, the new boardwalk, and opened up the actual waterfront area.
Man, yeah, that's
So,
a whole
so
different
prior to
story.
that time, the downtown area was an actual neglected area.
It was a ghost town.
It was a ghost town, so it was
Yeah.
easy for people to come down there and begin to actually post up by the bridge in the downtown area. Houses wasn't a problem with them. Wasn't nobody regulating that. There wasn't no resources.
Ain't nobody care.
Didn't nobody care because it was
Yeah.
majority black people living down there.
Yeah.
And before the white people begin to migrate aside there and may begin to try to want to make it more appealing, right, for mass migration, for gentrification purposes or whatnot, it was okay for the house community to come here and then get their resources that they needed. You had the free dental clinic from St. Mary's. Right, you had all type of resources that was available at that time. So they were saying, look, you can get more stuff down there than you can get here. Right? Why are you here? So they begin to migrate them down here. Right? So unless Wilmington does something like that, no one's voluntarily going anywhere, bro.
I mean, you can keep. What they gonna do is they just gonna keep running down on them, keep smashing their belongings.
Only thing they're gonna do is they're gonna keep smashing their belongings, right? And they're gonna learn how to travel light. I'm telling you, this is not me talking hypothetical. This is
That's
what's
just-
happening
that's
around the
just
country.
The human,
Then two things are going to happen
Yeah.
from that. They travel light. The ones that choose to comply, right, and just endure with resilience, they're going to begin to travel light, knowing that if they travel heavy, they're going to lose more on what they actually accumulate. And so they're going to travel light, and they're going to stay moving around, and they're going to be comfortable with, if they need to, right, going to jail from time to time, right, and getting a restart.
Yeah.
Right? That's one part. That's one population. Then there's another population, of course, that's going to go into complete crisis or whatnot, and many of those are going to end up hurt, deepest levels of mental health. They're going to fall into other forms of substance use disorder, and unfortunately, you're going to find those individuals, right, Allah bless them, right, harmed, indefinitely.
Yeah.
Then you got another population of individuals you're going to begin to see a resistance within the houseless community. They're going to begin to actually identify places that's actually not occupied by their owners. They're going to begin to squat.
Run up
Right.
in houses.
They're going to run into houses, squat. They're going to
Little
squat on
bandos.
unoccupied land, right? We're absentee owners. So there's a resistance component of that as well, too. They're not going to just lay down, right? So, and again, I can go on with a couple other scenarios, but the reality is that they're not going to force them out of Wilmington because there's nothing better. And New Hanover County is the most developed county of all of the actual, counties within the Cape Fear region. They have the more resources.
Yeah.
So where are you going to push them to? They're not going anywhere. And if you crack down on them, like jail looks like, an actual, a break.
Be right back.
Be right back. So my statement to Waddell is like, okay, I understand the rationale. I also recognize the level of actual, disregard for morality, right? A moral concern about the actual condition of these people. So my question between those two things, your rationale, right, and your lack of moral concern, how do we reconcile that? Show me something more. Don't just tell me what you're going to do. I'm going to stop this. Stop this and what? What's next?
They're not thinking about the end. They don't care about the end.
But that's my argument for the people that want to dispute them, right? You have to present the and. Because if you just actually dispute what they're doing, then you're doing the same thing that they're doing.
Right.
Right? If you're saying, okay, look, you want to just do this and it's going to hurt the people, and I'm telling you don't just do this, and they're saying, okay, what you want me to do? Leave them there?
You can't shoot down the idea without an alternative.
Without an alternative. Because they basically doing the same thing. You basically telling me the only thing I can do is leave them there, and I'm telling you the only thing that I can do is actually remove them, and I'm saying no. And the only thing isn't leave them there, and the only thing isn't to remove them. If you choose to remove them, right, come up with some conditions. Come up with some actual alternatives, right? Help them. Figure out how you can support them.
Either way, it's going to have to come out the budget.
Man, Wilmington got money, bro. New Hampshire County got loot. You know what I'm saying? They got the loot to do it, bro.
But the people with the loot don't want to, like, actually put the loot towards that. That's the issue. That's the lack of moral clarity on that. Those people who don't have that the people who do have that moral disregard for the unhoused population ain't gonna somehow just wake up one day.
So Waddell's a city council member, right?
Yeah.
The city council, the city, is eclipsed in terms of budgeting, right, by the county. If Waddell wanted to be if you want to be a great civic leader, what I would say you should do is you should become a voice of advocacy on behalf of the houseless community to the county and other institutions like the endowment who has funding and money, right, to resolve this problem properly. If you want to be I'm not saying you're a bad civic leader. I don't really know you, be honest with you. I'm just talking about you because you happen to actually step out there and claim that you want to resolve this problem with the houseless community by completely displacing them even more than what they're already displaced. Okay, I get it, and I understand why. I agree that it was regional and rational, but I don't think it has a moral concern that's needed when it comes to your solution. But if you want to be a great civic leader regarding this particular case right here, what I would advise is you become a voice of advocacy for the adequate resources to be invested to help resolve this problem here inside the actual New Hanover County in a way that's most proper. You have an opportunity to set a standard, right, and actually a set of practice that other cities around the country and other counties around the country can learn from and benefit. That would be my thought. But right now, the way they got things set up, right, I think the advocates against it is not being considered of the fact that the property owners and the people who's responsible for the city is not going to ignore the fact that there's a growing problem, right, of actual disregard for private property, public property, right, and houseless communities are kind of like overrunning that, right? They're not going to ignore it. On the flip side, I think that the people who are advocating for the removal of those individuals, you're completely disregarding the fact, right, that there's going to be a unintended, and if you're being told and you're choosing to actually still do it, intentional, I would say too, right? But it can also be unintended and intentional consequences as a result of that. Y'all need to reconcile that. That's my whole attitude, bro.
Right, too. Because like you said, they ain't going nowhere.
They ain't going nowhere, bro. And we deal with them on a daily basis, man. They're in our community, they're inside of our community center, right? And they're not dealing with normal human conditions, man. Their situation is really tough, man.
Not only are they not going nowhere, but more people are going to find themselves in that situation with the rising cost of everything. There's emergencies happen. You can't just eliminate the houseless population.
Yes, it's not going to happen.
Not happening.
Especially if we want to be honest, Mr. and Mrs. New Hanover County, right, citizens, the increase of it has come from result of your centennial revisiting of the Cape Fear Prosperity Project, right? The 2020 vision that happened 100 years after your 1898 massacre and robbery that took place, that now is making this particular city, county, and region one of the most economically stimulating regions in all of North Carolina, right?
So what they're trying to do is just make a utopia. I mean, that's the bottom line of it. They want Wilmington to be, like you said, they picking up the ball on what happened in 1898, and then they getting it back rolling, the Prosperity Project, so that Wilmington can be this just beautiful, this big white, bright city on the hill or at the beach where everything is all rosy and, you know, there's no blight.
After all the blood,
there's no urban decay.
After all the blood and the ravaging of lives, have been shared and done, you might be able to boast that you've created a utopia, but the narrative of how you got there will never make it an utopia, right? There's a residue, right, that's going to always leave a scent, a smell, right, of filth, right? And you have an opportunity not to make it that way. Again, that's a whole larger conversation that we'll be getting into about, just overall, the gentrification and urban development, the development in general that's happening here. But to wrap up the conversation about the actual houses community, yeah, man, it's people need to become more balanced, man, in their thinking, right? Not so dogmatic, right? It's not one or the other, right? You're not going to be able to remove these people. You may just displace them from an already displaced state, right? But they're resilient. They're going to find somewhere else to gather. You're going to cause them some temporary and long-term harm by the decision that you're going to make, but you're going to find that it's going to cause a greater problem, right? It's going to cause a greater harm, right, to them as well as to the actual overall city of Wilmington and the county as it relates to addressing the problem of houselessness here. Balance it out. Have some moral concern. Become a voice and advocate, right, for the right type of funding to be allocated to support interpersonal social services, right, meeting the people where they at, getting out there and interacting with the houseless community, finding out what they got going on, connecting them to customized, relevant resources, supporting them with management of mental health, supporting them with management of toxic stress, supporting them with management and recovery from substance use, right? You have to get in and you have to get at it, and you have to activate some professionals and some leaders to actually support in that particular effort. There is an opportunity to do that, and you have that opportunity, you have the resources to do that. That's my suggestion to you. Balance it out. I'm not suggesting you shouldn't deal with the problem. It's clearly a problem, right? And I wouldn't act like I don't have any people that's houses living on my front porch, right? Because I pay for that. Houses are paid for, you know what I'm saying? We pay a mortgage on it, whatever the case may be, and we have a right not to have that. I'm not going to suggest that someone else doesn't have a right to say that they don't want that either, right? But I'm also not going to say that when it comes to public spaces where taxpayers are paying dollars for, right, whether those are houses, communities are paying taxes or not, they pay taxes sometime in their life if they're elderly or or any age, that the spaces in which they're occupying, right, doesn't deserve, right, you, right, to think about if you're going to remove them from that space that some claim they have a right to, and that's a question, right, that you don't think about where else can they go. And if you don't have nowhere for them to go, right, then is there some additional type of service that you can offer them so you can actually help them find some place to go? That's my thoughts on it, man. I don't know.
I mean, that's a good way to kind of end it on that. You know what I'm saying? We didn't really talk that much about culture per se.
No, really, we talked everything about culture.
It was everything about culture. You know what I'm saying? It was about this. I asked you what was the culture of New Hanover County, the Cape Fear, and that is we kind of went directly to something that's kind of got a lot of people talking about his proposed solution, and that's why we sitting here talking about it now. So,
yeah, one thing for sure is anything that governs how people think, how people feel, and how people behave with each other, individually, micro, and on a macro, is influencing and is reflection of your culture, and how we as an actual city, and as we as a county, as we as human beings, right, think about people who are the least, right, resourced amongst us, the least stable amongst us. How we think about them and interact with them is a reflection of our moral culture, right, or our moral or the immorality within our culture, right? So it was absolutely, right, a conversation about culture. And we're going to find that most of what we're talking about is going to always connect to culture. What type of culture are you cultivating, right? Or what type of culture, right, have you been cultivated, right, to represent in your day-to-day life, beliefs, actions, speech, et cetera, et cetera.
And how you interact with your neighbor, how you interact with the people around you.
Yeah, man. Let's go. I think we got a nice little, kickoff for the first day. You know what I'm saying?
Brother.
We're going to come back and get at it. You know what I'm saying? We'll share some clips of this, you know what I'm saying, for you guys to check out. The full screening will be available if somebody want to kind of like just listen in throughout the day or whatnot, the overall, you know what I'm saying, kind of like dynamic. We may get into some skits and some other stuff later in the future, whatnot. So you got some suggestions. We'll get creative, you know what I'm saying? We're going to try to use our space as creative as we possibly can. Again, this is broadcasting from Sokoto House. This is the Real Deal broadcast. This is Breesy, Brandon Cagle, and Abdul Hafid Mohammed bin Abdullah. They call me Abdullah, and we appreciate you, man. Peace and blessings.
Peace and blessings.